All right. Um, I'll just give myself an introduction. Maybe you could introduce yourself as well. My name is Jacob Curtis. I'm a journalist at a TV station in Denver, and I've been covering the psilocybin mushroom sort of movement, if you will, the decriminalize movement. And today I'm speaking with Del Jolly. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization, Del.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Yeah, my name is Dale Jolly. I'm a co-founder of a psychedelic research nonprofit called Unlimited Sciences. We've been working with Johns Hopkins scientists to launch a prospective observational research study, and we launched this week. So very, very exciting week for our organization.
Yeah, that I saw your launch, your video that you produced on it came out on Thursday, I believe. Um, yeah, talk a little bit about the process of how you get to start working with Johns Hopkins. I mean, how long has that been? What has it been like, and how did it all get started?
Well, our nonprofit Unlimited Sciences was birthed from another nonprofit called the Realm of Caring. And this organization is in Colorado Springs. This was started by our co-founder Heather Jackson, whose son has Doza syndrome, which is a rare form of pediatric epilepsy. And she started that organization because she had found that cannabis was helping her son Zakai stop having the thousands upon thousands of seizures that he was having, and she didn't know how to start and how do you dose cannabis to your child. And it was very complicated back when she started that. And the organization was started with Heather and Paige Figge, who's Charlotte Figge of Charlotte's Web. Paige and Heather started this. Their story aired on CNN, if people remember, with Dr. Sanjay Gupta, and tons of families were flocking to Colorado at that time because it was illegal in a lot of states, and Colorado being one of the first to allow it. And so they flocked here, but again, people really didn't know how to do it. How many milligrams are you giving your child at what time? What are the interactions with other pharmaceuticals? And so Heather had the foresight to understand that they needed to start validating this through scientific measure. And as they grew from a couple families to now the Realm of Caring serves over 60,000 folks. As they were growing, they knew they needed the university validation. And lo and behold, she started with Johns Hopkins University. So Realm of Caring has been studying observationally how these families and other people use cannabis to treat various ailments. And they've been collecting data on that for over 4 years now. And they just started publishing on this data of use. And so interesting enough, Johns Hopkins, right? They're the premier researchers in the psilocybin space that we all know of or lots of people know of Roland Griffiths and Matt Johnson, and our principal investigator, Dr. Albert Garcia Romeo. And so as the decrim movement happened, and we see that people are using psilocybin in particular for various ailments and not just recreationally like we all have known in the past, Heather and our other co-founder, David Champion, and I just understood that there's going to be a wave of people who are going to come to these substances wanting to understand how to use them for various things. And there's also a very long history of use already. So we knew that if Johns Hopkins would partner with us, we'd be able to, one, have the premier research scientists in the space working with us, but then we could start to design a study very similarly to what Heather has done in the cannabis space to capture that data. And so that's how we got connected with Johns Hopkins. Basically, on the campus, the second floor is the cannabis floor, and they're studying cannabis in there. And Heather has that long relationship with them and basically said, take that data upstairs to Roland and his team, kind of take a look at it. And Dr. Albert Garcia Romeo had been kind of analyzing the cannabis data that the Realm of Caring had been collecting, and said, this is really great stuff. And we went to them and said, hey, we'd like to replicate this type of prospective observational research with you guys, and they agreed to work with us. So that's been over a year in the making, and like you said, Wednesday was our official launch of this study.
Wow, that's a really fascinating story to hear that the growth from CBD and the Charlotte's Web story, which a lot of us know, we saw that on CNN back a few years ago, and and you said that it was an observational study in the real world. What exactly does that look like? Have there been studies like this before, or is this something that's really sort of groundbreaking?
There have been similar studies like this, not as in depth or as particular to psilocybin. And the more interesting thing that I believe why our study is really unique, is it's prospective, meaning before people have these experiences, it's a series of 5 surveys, and 2 of them are before you even ingest these substances, if you intend on using these substances. And what helps us with is not this recall bias. There's a lot of surveys that kicked out really, really quickly, and it's to kind of tell us about your experience. And if that experience happened 6 months ago, it's very cloudy. There's a lot of recall bias, and it's kind of like, it's difficult. So how this prospective observational research works is, if you intend on using psilocybin and it's a date that's going to happen in the future, you enroll in the study, and then that'll generate you saying, hey, there's a consent form that's initiated, and then it dives into a lot of questions around set and setting. This is the other beautiful thing about our study, is everybody talks and knows about set and setting. This really dives into those types of questions. There's dietary questions. Are you vegan? Are you gluten-free, dairy-free? These kind of interesting things that I have never seen in any surveys that I've done in the past. I'm most excited about the set and setting questions, and the fact that it's prospective, meaning happening before your intended date. So again, it's about 2 weeks before your intended experience, you get a survey. It's kind of a longer, in-depth questionnaire with a long list of validated measures that are validated by Hopkins and the IRB that they use. The day of your experience, and then the day after, a couple days after, and then 2 weeks after, and then there's another one that comes about 3 months after, if people are willing to do that. So it's a pretty in-depth study.
Yeah, it's fascinating that you take into account the set and setting aspect, like you said. That's something that is from the broader, overall, longer psychedelic culture, if you will. Timothy Leary, I think, was the one who coined that term, if I'm not mistaken. But so anyways, it's interesting to hear that. And then you're talking about beforehand, the mindset of people going into it. In terms of the study, if people wanted to get involved, what is the time frame that you're looking at, and how many people, and where can they go to learn more about the study?
Everybody could go to unlimitedsciences.org, and then there's an Our Study section, and that's where you could enroll into the study. Anybody who's intending on using psilocybin, we do not encourage the use of psilocybin. Obviously, it's still an illegal drug, but just like a lot of substances that are used illegally, we understand that it's being used, and we'd like to understand how people are using it. But unlimitedsciences.org is where they could enroll, and it's our goal is to enroll 1,000 people. We want to complete the surveys with 1,000 people. So like I said, it's a series of about 5 surveys. And what I most encourage people is to complete the surveys, do them all. Sometimes it's a little bit tedious. They are very in depth because we have the information that we're asking is very in depth, and it could really lend some information around how this is being used, what's good, what's bad, and that will hopefully inform clinical studies. So I feel that this is the community's way to contribute to the science that's happening within this. One of the best examples that I'll give you as far as why this is important for the community to be involved is our good friend Rashad Evans, who was a UFC fighter. He was the light heavyweight champion at one point. He's a Hall of Famer. A lot of people know him. He was on the Joe Rogan show, and he was talking about our study. And so after he was on a show like that has millions of followers and listeners, we got hundreds and hundreds of emails. One of those emails really stuck out to me, where a gentleman had written in, and he said, "Hey, I use psilocybin for facial tics, and he said cannabis does not work. Where Tourette syndrome or things of this nature, there's some hints that cannabis could help for that. I never heard psilocybin being used for that. To me, that's a signal. I don't assume that guy's the only person who's maybe mitigated some of his health issues with facial tics using psilocybin. So if you cast a really wide net and you start hearing those signals, hey, I use it for facial tics, I use it for facial tics, I use it for facial tics, that information could then be analyzed by Johns Hopkins and say, hey, look, there's a large community is using this for facial tics. Maybe we should spend the time, money, and resources on a clinical study around facial tics and psilocybin. So what are those ailments that people are using it for? How can we have more informed clinical studies that are very, very expensive and time consuming? How can we make sure that that's a good use of time? And a prospective observational research study like we're doing can lend that information.
Wow. Yeah, I've never heard the facial tics aspect before. Yeah, I liked how you explained that, because it's like you can sort of concentrate or whittle down to a certain set of conditions like facial tics. It kind of reminds me of the story that Paul Stamets likes to tell about how he cured his stuttering problem through psilocybin.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a sort of a general question about Denver and Colorado. It just seems like there's more things going on in terms of mushrooms. There's the Denver Mushroom Cooperative. There's several hobby grow groups around town that are not just psilocybin, but all kinds of mushrooms. Is that something you see growing here? I mean, do you think this will be sort of a hub? Like, do you think it will, not that it was going to go down the same path as cannabis, but it'll have similar impacts?
Denver is obviously an incredibly progressive city, cutting edge in everything, right? Whether it's business or, I mean, it's such a wonderful, Colorado is such a beautiful state, and Denver is such a cutting edge city. I'd like to think that in every aspect as a human race, we're going to grow and kind of explore these things. As it pertains to psilocybin, I'm not sure. I know that part of our study with Unlimited Sciences at Johns Hopkins, there are questions specific to Denver. Our study is worldwide. If you could speak English and you're 18 years or older, that's what gets you in this study. And so there are some municipalities throughout the world that this is legal and decrimmed, and completely illegal federally and citywide. Those have a variance on experiences, we believe. If you're in a container that's Amsterdam and it's completely legal, it's probably a little bit different than being in the heart of Texas, right? So Denver specifically, if you are from Denver, there's a drop down for that, because we want to kind of understand, hey, how is this affecting Denver? That the decriminalized Denver that has happened last year, does that change the outcome or experience? Is the sky falling now in the city of Denver now that they had passed this initiative? We intend to maybe find some data that we could put to that and say, hey, the sky's not falling. There's actually a better quality of life. Or the truth is, we will absolutely publish on the negatives if that's a result as well. But Denver's cutting edge. They've done it in cannabis. They've led with that. So they're leading with the psilocybin initiatives, and we'll see where it goes. It's a very interesting time.
Yeah, and just to follow up a little bit on that, it's also sort of a nationwide phenomenon. You've got a question on the Oregon ballot for legalizing psilocybin therapy, and there's this decriminalized nature, and it seems like Canada might be another big next wave of decrim. I mean, they've already nationally legalized cannabis, but I don't know where I'm going with that, other than it just seems like it's gaining momentum.
I think with how tumultuous life is anymore and the information highway, that with the amount of information that's out there, I just think people are wanting to understand things at a lot more depth. And when we face the trials and tribulations of being human, with depression and anxiety and various other ailments, I think we just want the best options, or options, period. And so if some of these things that have been alienated in the past are starting to show a lot of progress in scientific study, and showing that, hey, they actually might be options for various things, I think we're kind of getting to a point where we need all the options we can get, and so I think that's why these movements are moving forward.
And I'll just kind of wrapping it up here. I mean, one of the thing that struck me about your study is that you are working with Johns Hopkins, and they've been I would characterize as the premier university studying psilocybin. They've been doing it for over a decade, I believe. And it just must be, I don't know, how does it feel to be working with that caliber of institution?
Johns Hopkins is incredibly cutting edge. Roland Griffiths started actually in 2000, so it's been 2 decades now, where they reinitiated psilocybin studies on healthy volunteers, and it's very humbling. I remember the first time that we went to Johns Hopkins and sat in a room, and for me to see Roland Griffiths walk in, and Matt Johnson and Albert Garcia, these are the people who've been working on this for a very, very long time. And in doing so, in the rigors that they put behind their studies, and how difficult it has been to put out a prospective observational research on psilocybin, an illegal drug, and make sure that we still are holding the highest academic rigors and all these things that are important have been humbling, and it shows me how serious they take it. They are very, very conservative in what they do, and that's important. It's important to be incredibly conservative with how difficult it is to study these substances. So we are very honored that they have chosen to work with us, collaborate with us. And we really all do believe that this type of information from the community will be very valuable in Johns Hopkins' future direction that they go with the clinical studies. So I've always said that, if people are interested in this movement and want to help, a study like this is probably the best chance for someone to just tell us about how they're utilizing these substances. And that will be, we always hear it, oh, there's not enough studies. There's not enough studies. That's going to be the narrative for quite some time. These types of initiatives that we're pursuing can absolutely lend to kind of breaking that stigma and kind of showing like, hey, there's some good, there are some bad too, because there's both. But to put it behind a Johns Hopkins study is very empowering. So we're excited and humbled and hope that we could really honor Johns Hopkins by getting folks to enroll in the study.
Well, I wanted to say thank you for your time this morning, and I really wish you the best of luck and your team. And thank you for doing this important work.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob. I appreciate you reaching out and allowing us to let people to know what we're up to so they could help advance some of this science.
All right, with that, I'll say goodbye.
Thank you.
All right, I'm